Welcome into the Boardroom podcast. I'm Ward 6 Alderman Ben Piper.
And Ward 4 Alderman Chad Wicker. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing well. We're here in the boardroom.
In the boardroom.
In the actual boardroom for the city of Hernando.
Dickens of a Christmas dresses here behind us.
Yeah, it's I guess we got a dressing room or changing room or something set up here, I guess, for the future. Wow. Dickens of a Christmas coming up this upcoming weekend. We're recording on November 9th, so we got a packed weekend in Hernando. Dickens of a Christmas, the 10th, 11th, and 12th on the square. They've got ice skating. They've got trolley rides. They've got historic tours. You got shopping. You got hot chocolate. The mayor's reading night before Christmas.
Yeah, that's tomorrow and Friday night.
Christmas tree lighting. There's so much going on. Just go to the square. Something will be going on.
Is the crew doing the skating again?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know which groups are doing the ice skating, but somebody will be doing the ice skating out there. Weather is kind of good.
I think it's going to be a little rain.
Saturday and Sunday will be super nice.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be nice. Big football game Saturday night, too.
Ole Miss and Georgia, number 9 versus number 1, number 2. That's right. Depending on which one you look at. Big football game going on. It's over in Athens, though, so nobody will be in Oxford. Whole town will probably shut down. Everybody will go to Athens, I guess. Ben,
you want to talk about our guests we're going to have
yes, sir.
On this episode?
The other thing going on this weekend is it is Veterans Day on Saturday. There's a Veterans Day parade in Hernando Friday, November 10th at 10 a.m. So it's Veterans Day weekend here in Hernando. This is our Veterans Day episode of the Boardroom podcast, and we are bringing on our special guest is William Brooks, who is a distinguished veteran, originally from DeSoto County, double amputee from the Operation Iraqi Freedom in the is the early 2000s or mid 2000s?
I believe what he told us he
2004, 2005.
Yeah, I think he said he joined up right out of high school, and then served in the National Guard and was I think they were deployed sometime in 2004, and I think he was injured in 2005 or 6.
That's right. But you will get to hear his story.
Yeah,
he went on to serve as a alderman in the city of Southaven. Friend of mine, friend of Chad's.
Yeah, and he's someone that I know you do, I do. We both reach out to him when we have questions about what's going on, and he's always been there to take your questions and give his opinions and his thoughts with his experience. I think he was 12 years in Southaven. They had some. He had to make some tough decisions during his term. They were also doing the pennies for the park tax, and they also had some issues in the mayor's office there when he was there. So, anyway, fantastic interview from him. We glad he came on the program. What else?
Always ready to share an opinion too. He will tell you his opinion.
Yeah.
He is.
Well, I think
that's what I like.
He shared his his story at his military service, but also at the end he kind of gives a call to service to DeSoto Countyans about why we still just cannot get past 25-30% turnout in our county.
That's right.
Voter turnout.
That's
so
right.
we'll probably hit on that at the end of the show about the election recap, but.
It is a good interview. You want to stay tuned for that. But first, we're going to jump into what's going on in the city of Hernando. We had a board meeting on Tuesday, first regularly called board meeting of the month of November. So one of the big things from it was the board approving or authorizing the issuance of a general obligation bond in the amount of $7.5 million. This is coming without a tax increase, so that's the first question that people have. But what this is essentially borrowing $7.5 million to make improvement to parks and recreation in the city of Hernando. There is a lighting project scheduled for the soccer area or the soccer complex. One area behind the concession stand needs to be lit. Parking lot lighting needs to go in there. So that will be done. Quad or a 4-field baseball. Is it baseball and softball or just baseball, Chad? It's just baseball, right?
Well, I mean, we would love to do more, but I think we're only going to be able to do a concession stand and a
4 fields.
Quad. Yeah.
There's some match money in there for a state grant to build a road into Renaissance Park and provide some green space, pavilion, kind of flesh out Renaissance Park quite a bit more. But these funds, and of course there's a contingency in there for any cost overruns and whatever else. And if by some happenstance that we don't need the entire 7.5. Well, it's really 7.2 when you take out the fees that go along with it. 7.2. If for some reason it turns out to be only $6 million, you could take that 1.2 and put it right back into paying the principal.
Right.
So-
And we're going to have semi-annual payments, so we'll pay twice a year on the bond. I think we're in a position where we can afford to do that. You know, obviously, and this may be controversial or whatever, but we tried to do this through a pennies for the park referendum last year, and our voters decided that's not what they want to do, so we did it a different direction. So we're going to
working within the budget.
Yeah, we're working within our budget. And
times are tough. Times are tough. You work within your budget at your house. You work within the budget in government, and I think that's what voters told us. That's what we're going to do.
So we should see the lighting project fairly quickly. Hopefully,
Yes.
I don't want to say maybe by next spring, the spring season, we could have the lights done. Maybe
Possible.
And then the baseball project's going to be a little longer, but hopefully spring of 2025, something like that.
You'd like to say about 18 months on that.
Yeah.
On the soccer lighting, it's a little bit quicker because the RFQ is already out there. The request for quotes already out there. I think we're opening those sometime in the next 7 to 10 days, so we'll be able to hopefully get that moving forward. It's really just about if the supply houses have those products that are needed. But the city also, we appointed Nicole Hilario as our assistant city clerk. It's a new position that was created in this budget to give the city clerk, I guess, somebody that is that's their second hand, more or less. You have your city clerk that has to go out for vacation and sick time, and sometimes our city clerk travels, and you'd have somebody that's here to kind of pick up the slack, as it were, to keep things running at all times, and then also it prepares kind of that second person to potentially be the next city clerk one day, if the whoever's in the board and whoever the mayor deems that person's ready for that position. So it kind of is a backup plan for that position. City clerk, obviously, very important position within the city. Handles pretty much all the money, runs payroll, make sure bills are paid, make sure invoices are paid, goes through the bidding process, make sure all that stuff's advertised. It's a very important position. It requires a lot of organizational ability. Another couple things that we jumped into was we had a lowest and best bid from Farrell Paving to do a McInville sidewalk project. Chad, do you remember that? Right there at the high school, right?
Yeah, so I think you're going to start just right there at Walgreens and go up to essentially just past the Magnolia apartment complex at the baseball fields. That was part of an MPO grant that I think the city's had for several years, and I think they were getting the right-of-ways and so forth. So you will see a sidewalk there, and continue to see improvements on that corridor. That's a busy corridor there, the McInville corridor. And so this is just another improvement there. And I think we're going to continue to see additional sidewalks, hopefully across the high school property, and then the church property and all the way up there. But I think at some point we need to talk about widening that road. I don't know what that's going to entail.
You have a big sidewalk on either side of the road now, so it's going to be very difficult to widen it.
Well, right there it's already 4 lanes, but I think further up, kind of where the church is, coming in, and then up there by Wesley Meadows. I run that just about every morning, and it's I've noticed over the last 6 months or so just more traffic. Even at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, it's more traffic. So
yeah, I think another thing that will potentially help that out. I mean, just in my opinion, people are looking for ways to go in that direction. When Commerce is cut all the way through to Jaybird, and you have other ways to get to Mount Pleasant and Byhalia Road, I think that'll divert some traffic off of there. People that live off Jaybird Road won't necessarily have to come to McInville to get certain ways. But
and the high school getting put up, the high school being built north on the north part of McInville will probably help with some traffic there. But that's just a future concern. Last thing, I guess, Ben, you want to talk about the list of paving roads. We approved a bid for $211,000 for essentially a lot of the smaller roads we're going to try to get paved this year. The asphalt street overlay project.
You may see some paving continuing to go on, and that's one of the things this board did intentionally that has not been done in the past. So a lot of times in the past, the board was waiting on property taxes to come in, which usually came in the first quarter of the calendar year. So sometimes you wouldn't see paving work start until the spring or summer. One of the things this board has the advantage of is the Mississippi Modernization Act funds that come from internet sales tax. So the internet sales tax is essentially helping get roads paved just about year round. So you have roads being paved now here in mid November, when that was not something that would happen in the past. We're also fortunate to have some unseasonably warm weather. Asphalt plants are still open, so we're still getting roads paved. So you may see, I know in Ward 6, I think Hillshire Drive is being milled down right now, so they can try to get it overlaid, and the two little offshoots off of that over there in the Notting Hill neighborhood, that area is getting milled down and overlaid, getting a little bit further.
Yeah, I got a list here.
There.
So Fairway Oaks.
I think that one's I think we're doing some sewer work on that one. I think we're going to push that one till the spring.
That's why I guess that's why the Panola Street's going to get some work done to it. Center Street from Mount Pleasant to School Street.
I think that one may be done now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
I think that one's
in
done.
front of the Baptist Church. Hillshire Street, you just mentioned that one. College from Hill Street to Oak Grove. Drake Cove. We've already done the Kirkendall Park parking lot. We did that. So I think those 4 or 5. Commerce by Windy City. Where it dips right there at the Redeemers Group. It dips in the joint. We're fixing that. Memphis Street, widening overlay.
I think that one's probably going to be another spring one. I think that's a big one.
And then, of course, the roundabouts on this list. I submitted some ones that's not on this list, so we're going to continue to see improvements there. I think we had.
Got a lot of. Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
There's my mother. Hey.
Oh, there we go.
Hey, Mom, how you doing?
I just never seen you in action before.
You're live on the podcast.
Live on the podcast. There you go.
You do a great job.
Thank you. Okay. That's good stuff.
That's right.
I thought you'd want to see her.
Yeah.
So we've got that going on. That was the amount in that paving was $211,866 for some of those paving projects that are being done. Quick reminder: we budgeted about $2.5 million, $2.7 million total.
We still have some bigger ones coming. They're already they're roundabout at 51. Excuse me.
No. I ain't paying for that one.
Yeah, the roundabout at Holly Springs and Mackinville. So.
Yeah, something had to happen there. I guess it is kind of it's a very well trafficked area down there where Mackinville turns into Holly Springs. But so that was that's the big things from the meeting. It was a fairly short meeting. Went to executive session to discuss some prospective litigation, and those things are always going on. But we didn't have a lot of. I didn't have a lot of discussion on these things. A lot of it's just kind of paying bills and keeping things moving forward for the city.
And just to reiterate what you said, I mean, the project that we're going to do at the baseball fields, that was something that we all heard from, and we're addressing that, probably not the way we all wanted to, but we're getting it done. So I think that's something positive about this board and this group of people we serve with, that we are addressing issues as they arise. So.
And it's important to. I know some people may look at it and say, well, I'm 60 years old. I don't have any kids.
Yeah,
right. I don't get to use these parks. Well, that you may not. You choose not to use the park. You can certainly go for a walk in the park anytime you want to. If you don't want to, that's okay too.
Sure.
I've been fortunate enough. I've never had to call the fire department to my house. But I still have taxes that go towards paying for the fire department, pay for the police department.
You never burnt nothing in your oven. You never.
I haven't. I have not. Now somebody has at my house. Not me.
It wouldn't be. It wouldn't.
Not me. It wasn't me. Still pay them taxes. So that's part of it. Is just this is everybody benefits from having a strong park system. It gives kids something to do. It brings people in from the county as well. If you've ever seen, I know we had a map at one point that showed, like little location dots of all the registrations from Tate County, DeSoto, all over DeSoto County, going into Horn Lake, Southaven, Olive Branch. Kids come from all over to Hernando to use our parks. Now, whether it's basketball, baseball, soccer, whatever it may be, we have to make sure these facilities are safe and that they're up to date. A lot of them have not been updated in decades.
Yeah, anybody who's been out there and seen that concession stand and the bathroom facility there knows it needs to be done. And we took a step last year in purchasing that project, and Ben and I and the mayor negotiated purchasing that property. and we're just going to make improvements out there and make it the best we can, and with the tax dollars we have. And
It'll be something people can be proud of, and we're going to continue to work to try to find the best way to get it done.
We're opening bids today for the restroom facility at Kirkendall Park, so that park's really coming along. We got it repaved. We cut all the trees down a couple years ago. So, well, as far as city business, I think that's about it. Ben, do you want to kind of recap our state elections we had, just kind of briefly?
Yeah, so we didn't have a lot of local races to be decided. The Republican primary that we had in August decided a lot of those races here, at least in the Hernando area. Doc Harris did not have a Democratic challenger, so he is now our representative-elect.
House seat 28.
Mike McClendon, our state senator,
Seat 1.
Again, did not have a Democratic challenger. Our supervisor, Robert Foster, he's our supervisor-elect in District 5. We did have our Karen Sanders,
Justice Court
judge.
She won
She
fairly
did have an
comfortable.
independent challenger, but I think she had about 7,000 votes to about 2,000, something like that. It was not an especially close race.
Well, something that I'm excited about and that we talk about with William later on is, we have some new legislators coming from DeSoto County delegation. Some of our previous legislators had, with lack of a better word, a bad reputation with some of the state leadership, and I think that harmed us in some areas. But now we're getting some new people there who seem to, have a good head on their shoulders, and I'm excited about the next 4 years with them serving in the legislature.
Well, it is left to be seen. I'll say that. That was certainly what we heard from people in Jackson. That was the feedback that we got from Jackson. Now that there are new people, and there is presumably a new movement here in DeSoto County and have a new delegation, will it be more? Will it be better for DeSoto County or not? That in my opinion, that is left to be seen. I hope that the feedback that we got from Jackson was honest, and that and that it does mean that things will have some amount of positive impact for DeSoto County, and honestly that we get our fair share of the taxes that are sent to Jack, because honestly it's our money. I think William speaks to that later on, but we don't want to talk too much about what we're going to get into, but we're going to be bringing him on here in just a minute. And the statewide races, Governor Tate Reeves won re-election over Brandon Presley by about a 5-point margin. Delbert Hoseman won fairly comfortably. Our state auditor, Shad White, won fairly comfortably.
Yeah, there
Michael
was,
Watson, Lynn Fitch.
There was a
Republicans
concern
across the board.
Yeah, there was a concern that maybe there was some the governor's seat would flip, and then maybe see that trickle down somewhere. And there's no question that DeSoto County and Mississippi in general is a conservative Republican state.
And I'll say, because a lot of times people will give this criticism towards campaigns, that sort of thing, is like, but you just got to be the person that raises the most money. In Mississippi, that's not the case, because Brandon Presley raised $13 million. And outraised.
If anybody saw the ads, 80% from outside money or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So he raised the money. He did it. He did the money raising part. And people in Mississippi, to Governor Reeves' point, Mississippi's not for sale. Its voters aren't for sale.
Well, I think, Ben, just on a national level, I think the Democratic Governor Association, the Democratic Party, was using Mississippi, Kentucky, Virginia as a litmus test for the next presidential election, and seeing if they could get a higher turnout in the minority communities in Mississippi, and see how things played in Kentucky. Well, I think the Democratic governor did win in Kentucky. So
I don't know if that's the best litmus test. Brandon Presley can figure his way off a stage.
Well,
So I don't know if that's the best litmus test, but that's fine.
But I mean, I think they were seeing if a white Democrat could get a minority turnout in Mississippi,
Sure.
And it didn't seem like that was the case. I don't think they got the turnout they were looking for to make that race competitive. So,
well, we will definitely be talking more turnout, a little bit more about these elections as we wrap up our interview with our guest this week. Let's bring him on now.
Yes,
William
sir.
Brooks, our Veterans Day episode guest of the week, distinguished veteran of DeSoto County. All right, and now we are bringing on our special guest for this week, our Veterans Day episode of the Boardroom podcast. We have William Brooks, a former Southaven alderman, also a distinguished veteran. Can I call you distinguished veteran?
Man, you're being a little nice, but okay. Not sure I'm
He's
distinguished, but I'll
yeah.
take the
He's
the
distinguished.
compliment.
He's extremely distinguished. I like to give him a hard time. I've known him for a little bit now, and even though I show up to our recording with some Ole Miss on, he's got some Mississippi State on. We still can break bread and be nice to each other from time to time.
I mean, it's the Hatfields McCoys, but Hill State, you know.
We
Right.
got a game coming up in a couple of weeks.
It'll be a fun Thanksgiving, I'm sure, across the state.
Sadly, it won't be much of a game. I'm going to go ahead and concede now. I'm not very optimistic. Not this year.
I
but
know that
maybe.
trick. I know that trick.
But
I've fallen into it before.
But as we State fans say, man, there's always next year. That's our mantra.
Us, Ole Miss too, a lot of times. So, William, tell us a little bit about your background. I know originally you're a DeSoto County lifetime guy, but and kind of why you chose to go into the armed forces.
So, yeah, I was born in Memphis in '82. I've been living in Southaven my entire life. And so my parents moved here in the late '70s. My mom's from Greenville. My dad's from Eupora. They moved up here to teach school at Southaven High School in the late '70s, and we've lived here ever since. But when I joined the National Guard when I was 17. I was actually a junior in high school back in 1999. And at that time, I was kind of a dumb kid that just needed some discipline and direction in life. And I thought, well, this would be a good idea. And this was a good 2.5 years before 9/11 happened. So that was pretty much why.
Wow.
And it was, the paying for college was an incentive and all that stuff. But truthfully,
Sure.
I just wanted to serve and do something, but also be able to go to college while I served. So,
Did you have any family members previously that had served? It was kind of
yes. So both of my grandfathers, my dad's dad, he retired from the Army. He got drafted during World War II. Spent 22 years. So my dad was an Army brat growing up. My other grandfather had fought in World War II. He fought in the Battle of the Bulge.
Wow.
And so my dad's dad fought in Guam. So they were both combat engineers. So I come from a military family. My great-grandfather fought in World War I. And so he actually trained at Camp Shelby. My grandfather trained at Camp Shelby. And then I trained at Camp Shelby before I went to Iraq. So Camp Shelby is pretty important to our family, to our military history anyway.
And for those of y'all who listen, and I'm not originally from the state of Mississippi, didn't know what Camp Shelby was. Camp Shelby's just outside Hattiesburg. It's an enormous.
So Camp Shelby is at one time, I don't know if it's changed, but it was the largest reserve and National Guard military training post in the country. So like Fort Hood would be the biggest one from the Army, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure a few veterans may correct me, but so Fort Hood's massive, and now Camp Shelby is the largest training post for Reserve and National Guard. Matter of fact, when we were there, we also were training alongside the Tennessee National Guard and the Wisconsin National Guard while they were training to go to Iraq. So there was 3 huge brigades from different states training to go to Iraq at the same time that I was there.
So tell us more about, I guess, the when you're doing the training, you're going through basic, all these, it's obviously really challenging. It's meant to prepare you for, the worst of the worst scenarios for sure.
Yeah, I mean, basic training, for the Army it can be somewhat tough. Back then, anyway, it's a little bit different now. Not that it was just over the top tough, but no, it prepared you. You have to learn basic soldiering, from drill and ceremony to basic discipline. You have to learn how to do things and learn to be simply good order and discipline. I was military police, so I went through military police school.
Is that in Fort Leonard Wood?
It is. So it had just moved. Back in the day, it used to be at Fort McClellan.
Okay.
And then it moved over to Fort Leonard Wood. So I went in 2000 to Fort Leonard Wood.
Fort Lawson the Woods.
Fort Lawson the Woods. Yeah,
right.
yeah. So it's not a very nice place. There's not a lot to do when you go outside the post.
It's
that's
not
for sure.
there, yeah.
It's not a booming metropolitan area. That's for sure.
Rural Missouri is kind of where
Yeah,
they are. It's,
Rolla, I think it's called, Waynesboro, something along those lines. There was just not much to do back in those days.
So you get through your basic, you get through your MP school, and then where do you go from there?
So I went to so let's backtrack a little bit. So between my junior year, between my junior and senior year of high school, I went to boot camp.
Okay.
So I finished my final exams my junior year, and then like 2 days later, the next day, I left to ship off to go to basic training. I was 2 or 3 days late for my senior year. So I graduated basic training, came back, finished high school. I was a couple days late for high school my senior year. Finished that 3 days after graduating high school. I shipped off to military police school. Came back 10 days later. I started college and then was working. So I was in college and doing the and working while I was going Northwest at the time for my first year. While then 9/11 happened.
Okay.
And then so 9/11 happened, and it was like a wake-up call. I kind of realized right then that morning. My mom had woken me up. I had been working in a truck line. I was working at Avery Express and going to Northwest. And I was a couple hours before getting up going to school because I'd been working like the midnight to 5 a.m. shift. So I got up and in time to watch the second tower get knocked down. It was kind of at that point that I realized I would be going to war. I didn't know where, but you kind of knew at that point that
It got serious. Yeah.
yeah, this was real. This was no longer just something that you do. This was no longer the weekend warrior game where you just go once a month and a couple weeks a year. Like this was the real deal. So
I think for anybody that I think there's a lot of people now that whether they're in high school or college or even entering the workforce, they didn't really experience that the way that a lot of us did, where we're in high school and we're seeing this potentially play out, or we're in the workforce, you're seeing it play out on TV, and at first you're just like, well, maybe this is an accident. Like first plane hits a building, and you're like, well, this is a terrible, tragic accident. And then the second one happened, you're like, oh man, like this is, and then you get more reports of there's another one headed towards DC, and the one that hit the Pentagon. It was like this is happening on our turf, and it you're sad in a lot of ways because there's people who are losing their lives, but at the same time you're angry because you're ready to, like, what do we need to do to find out who did this and bring them to justice, I think, as well. But you were one of on the different side of that, where like you're the one bringing justice in some ways, right?
But to your point, I was 19, almost 20 when that happened, and I was just as angry. I had that bravado of, man, I'm going to war. Let's go. I don't care. I was just like everybody else, as angry as can be, and like willing to do whatever it took. Like let's do this. You want to dance? Let's dance. And so, little did I know I'd get the opportunity. Within a couple of years. But it was, and again, if you didn't live through 9/11, it's hard to, like you said, it's hard to explain to people today, especially and I sound like an old man, but the younger generation, they don't.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I'm 41, but it's different time that understanding what the world was like back then and how, like, so much innocence has been lost. Like our world was different before then. Like the airport's not the same. Nothing's the same anymore.
Right.
So it's hard to explain what life was like compared before that, and like this is the world they know and grew up in. So, but I don't know. It's
just a different world. That
different
was
world, that's for sure.
Pearl Harbor and 9/11, it just changes the outlook on things, and it's hard to believe that 9/11 is now 22 years ago.
Correct.
So I guess we're all getting a little older. I was a sophomore in high school. I think, Ben, we're the same age, so I think, or a junior in high school, so that's about what we were doing. So
yeah, I was my high school had like trailers in the back because we didn't, I guess, have enough money to build onto the high school or something.
Goodness.
I don't know, but so we were out in a trailer. We didn't even have TV out there, so we came back in. Everybody's buzzing, and you're like, "What in the heck's going on?" Like, was there like a fight by the Coke machine? Like, what's everybody buzzing about? And it was 9/11 had just happened.
I remember I had going to class that morning. Like a few hours later, I had like a 10 o'clock class or something Northwest, and I remember the teacher. It's like a sociology class or something. She tried to go on as normal, and everybody's sitting around just with their jaws dropped. Like there's
no way.
There's no way. The only reason we're here is because you couldn't afford an absence. But like no one's like turn the TV on. No one has even remotely cared about sociology right now.
That's right.
It was just and it felt like kind of a fog and haze over the next few days.
Mm-hmm. Granted, I don't know that I've ever cared about sociology a ton.
No, me either.
Very, very low percentage of caring. And I took sociology class, so it's you made it through it. So from that point on, I guess tell us about your experience and kind of your story being deployed. And
so we had kind of heard rumblings. Obviously, the Iraq War kicked off in March of '03. Mm-hmm. So we had kind of heard rumblings. We knew that our time was coming. So the National Guard, is a reserve component of the Army. And so, but the combat arms part of the reserves is in the National Guard. So what that means is the Army Reserve is mostly support. Your trucking, even military, even MPs and different things, transportation, those type things. But the combat arms part is in the National Guard. So we were an armored brigade. The 155th was an armored brigade. We were tanks, all those things. So you kind of knew at some point our number was being called, especially as the war kept going on, and it was it wasn't just some quick few months like Desert Storm. You knew it was coming, and things kept getting worse and worse. And sometime in the spring of '04, we got put on alert. What that meant was, hey, orders are coming. Prepare yourselves now. They're coming. And then I want to say I actually got called up to go do some military police duty in Italy for a month. Mm-hmm. Well, the only cool things the Army ever did for me. So while I'm over there playing cop on a base, that's pretty much when we found out we were going. And then when we get home, within a couple weeks of being home, sometime in early June, we get a phone call, and officially told, and the orders are being read officially told over the phone. You are now being called up. You have however many days, and you're on orders for the next 565 days or whatever it is. So we knew, and I had to report to Camp Shelby, and I think I got there in late July, early August of '04, and then we started training for the next 6 months, and spent a month of that in the desert in California, at what's called the National Training Center, and then in early January of 2005, I shipped off, flew out out of Gulfport, the Air National Guard base, and flew over to Iraq, flew to Kuwait, and then eventually to Iraq.
So there was I didn't realize there was such a and we've known each other for a long time. I guess you always get the impression that it's you get a call one day and then you're there soon after, but it really is kind of
they have to give there's a little bit of a gap. They have to give you time. They have to give you time to prepare for your family. I mean, you're calling up civilians who are part-time military. Mm-hmm. So you have to have time to get your orders. Your affairs in order. Your family life, your work. I mean, you have to let your work know. Hey, by the way, hold my job and be gone for the next year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Things like that. So you have to have time to get your affairs in order. You have to sign. I mean, you fill out a will. I mean, if you don't have a living will, you fill out a will. Mm-hmm. I remember that's when it really, you talked about earlier, when it really got real for me. That's when it really got real. Is, oh crap, I've got to fill out I'm 22 years old and I got to fill out a living will.
Right.
And so you realize then this is the real thing, and it got really, really real for me. We were training, and it was late August of 2004. We had just been out in the field for a couple days. One of the first times we'd gone out in the field to do a mock base, learning how base operations would work while we're over there. They built up a big mock base and how we would handle those things. So we were integrating doing that. And I remember coming back, and I got a phone call from my best friend letting me know that one of our friends who, Matt Stovall, First Lieutenant Matt Stovall, had been killed. Mm-hmm. And so he was a friend of mine. He lived around the corner from me. He was married to one of my best friends from growing up. And that's when it really, 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 really hit home for me that, oh crap, this isn't just somebody that I halfway know. This is a good friend of mine.
Right.
And we drank beer together. We partied together. We're friends. And I mean, literally lived around the corner from me. And so it's that's when it really, really sunk in that this is, you're going to a truly dangerous war zone. This isn't a game. And, it was very, very surreal, to say the least.
I know a lot of this can be, it's very difficult to talk about in some ways, probably in a lot of ways. And people don't necessarily understand, I think, when somebody comes back, tell me what it was like, that sort of thing. And I'm sure a lot of it is some of the worst, memories you have, right, that you're having to dive into. So we appreciate you doing that, because I know it's not something easy to do.
And I feel it's necessary to talk about the good and the bad. Mm-hmm. I think I'm at a point in my life, it'll be 19 years this upcoming March, so it's been over 18 years for me since I got injured. And so I'm at the point where I feel it's necessary to talk about. Yeah, I struggle with it at times. I struggle with the attention. I struggle with people, making a big deal about it. And it's just because that's not the way I'm wired. Mm-hmm. And so that's not the way I like to just blend in and be normal, live my life, and just those kind of things. But but people, you'll hear this a lot from veterans. That some of your best and worst memories are from the time you served. Like the brotherhood is like nothing else. There is no bond outside your family like that. There is no comparison. You can't go to war with someone and bleed and not have that bond. And you just can't put it into words. But the day I was injured. So let's go to that. I've been in Iraq barely about 2.5, maybe 3 months, and about 5 days prior, I was walking to the shower, and I had so back then we were in it's very hot area. So when we went in 2005, it was the third wave. It's called Operation Iraqi Freedom 3. So if you ever see a letter of OF 1, 2, or 3, I was part of 3. So we were doing the government transition. It was a really hot time. Like it was a brutal. I mean, there was obviously brutal time. We were transitioning the government, supposedly trying to turn it over to the Iraqis. It was just a brutal, brutal time. Well, I'm walking to the shower. Over there, I was in a really rough area. We were at what's called the base of the Sunni Triangle, the Triangle of Death. So we were in a really hot area, Iskandariyah, Fob Kalsu. And walk in the shower, I rolled my ankle. And so my ankle was swollen up. It was painful, but I had to go to work. I was an MP. So we had to go. I was working at a detention facility. So we were 18 hours a day, we were guarding prisoners. And so I'll go to work, and in about 3 hours, my ankle's just killing me. So I take the boot off, and my ankle is swollen up the size of a melon. Well, over there, the terrain's so bad, so I had to go to the doctor, and they're like, hey, you're confined to quarters. Well, the worst thing you can be when you're overseas is be confined to quarters, because there's nothing worse than having idle time.
Right.
There's no internet, so I can only watch so many DVDs. There's only, you can't go eat chow. You can't do anything. Like, it is miserable. You're just like, it sucks. Quite frankly, you want to be busy. And so the doctor said, as long as you squeeze the boot on, you can go. You can get out and do stuff. Well, I had been confined for 4 days, 5 days. Well, a buddy of mine had not had a day off. And they were wanting to drive to Baghdad. We had a routine mission. And I was like, man, I said, Wes, I'll drive for you. Let me go. He said, you sure? I was like, heck yeah, man, let me go. I needed to get some. They have a big Walmart size PX at the airport in Baghdad. We don't have any. We're a little crappy outpost. We don't have anything. I'm like, yeah, I need to go get out. I just want to get out.
Sure.
And so I get out, and we get outside the base. We're on our routine mission. It's about 25 miles from where we're at, and probably about halfway through, we go through this from what I remember, we go through this little small town. We're a four vehicle convoy, and I'm driving the fourth vehicle. I'm the very last vehicle in the convoy. And so we're driving through, and all of a sudden they march for everything over there. I mean, they have a holiday for everything. They're mad about everything, and they're pretty pissed off that we're there, and I can't blame them.
Right.
And so they swarm our vehicles. And I remember my gunner was like, "Oh crap, it's like Black Hawk Down." He's very country. So I'm like, "Oh God!" And so I lock load my pistol. I'm holding I have a shoulder harness. I'm driving, and I have my pistol in one hand while I'm driving, and they're banging on the doors. And long story short, we get through that. We're like, so we can finally breathe. Like, this is cool. This is good. And over there, the big thing back then was obviously was IEDs, improvised explosive devices, which are roadside bombs. And it's kind of like if you would see snow, if you see tracks in the snow and you see the tracks, you stay on those tracks, you're good to go. Same thing with the sand. So you get over there, and if you see the tracks in front of you and you don't see a crater from a bomb,
right,
you're like, I'm going to stay on these tracks. I'm pretty good. Well, it starts sandstorming. So now all of a sudden we can't see, and all the tracks are getting cut over. And they tell us to stagger the vehicles. Our squad leader tells us to stagger the vehicles. And so just for better vision. Well, about a couple of minutes into that is when I run over the IED. So I'm driving, and it's called a pressure plate, kind of like what you would see in a movie where you step on a landmine, you step off, and it blows up. So my front tire rolls over. It's buried under the ground. You can't see it, obviously. My front tire runs over it. It explodes. Explodes pretty bad, shoots the vehicle up. They told me 10, 12 feet, they guessed, and it went pretty high. Well, the engine block went through me and traumatically took my legs. And so when they found me, I'm laying there on the ground. They sprinted, my buddy Richard Anthony that saved my life, he sprinted a good 40, 50 meters. And when they found me, the door was laying on me. And they didn't realize a big, heavy, up-armored doors laying on me from the waist down. I'm bleeding really bad from my face, my arms, but they can't really see anything from my waist down. And he said, when we removed the door, that's when we saw the mess, as they put it. And they realized, and I kept trying to sit up, and I was pretty lucid. I'm sure shock had a lot to do with it, but I was pretty lucid. He said, I had to forget that I knew you, and immediately went to CPR. And this is where being in the National Guard, well, I'm always grateful that I was in the National Guard, not necessarily the regular Army. Is that I was with a group of guys in the civilian world. Most were cops, firemen, EMTs. Richard was a volunteer EMT, so he was not not an Army medic. The medic was in my truck, so the medic on our mission was in my truck with me. So the medic is blown up. Now I'm the worst injured, but he's still pretty banged up.
Sure.
And so his head's pretty rattled, and so Richard is he's worked wreck scenes, crash scenes in the civilian world, right? He's done this daily basis, but not in a military environment. But he knew immediately how to, and the same thing with our platoon sergeant Nat Burcham. He knew he was he'd worked wrecks too, and he had he had an uncle that had been an amputee, so he knew immediately to tie me off, do everything correctly. And so they knew how to immediately work on me based on their civilian experience. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's why I'm a huge, that's that right there. I don't know. I'm not saying I wouldn't survive, but that was a godsend for me to have those two men that knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't hesitate. They had done this repeatedly in the civilian world. Granted, they hadn't dealt with a bomb injury, but they had dealt with car wrecks, severed limbs, things of those natures, traumatic injuries. And Richard tied me up. He tied my femoral arteries off. I was basically traumatically amputated. And so he said he got me to the bird. They called in a medevac helicopter, and within 5 to 10 minutes it was there, because we were only about 15 minutes away from Baghdad. We were headed to Baghdad, thankfully. And he told me, he said that it's one of the hardest things he had to do was say goodbye to me, put me on a plane, because I kept asking him to come with me. Can you come with me? And he said Willie, I just cried. I couldn't deal with it. That you were asking me to get on the bird with you, and I couldn't. I had to let you go. From there I get to the what's called 86 CASH, Combat Support Hospital, and that crew, they were another godsend. I ended up dying twice. I deadlined twice. They had to bring me back to life. I had I was told 36 bags of blood within the first hour or two. Wow. Your body is I was 6 foot tall, about 215 pounds, and you're a full grown man, and your body only holds about 12 to 13 pints of blood. And each bag is a pint of blood. Well, about 48, I went through about total of 48 bags over 2 days' time, just from keeping me stabilized, dying twice. And from there, they stabilized me enough to keep me alive. And I went north to Balad, and then from Balad finally to Germany. And I was in Germany for a few days. At that point, I was really bad off. They had called my family, prepared my family to actually fly to Germany. They thought I might die. And they had literally gone and getting orders and passports and everything ready to send my family to Germany. And then I made it through. Finally got back, and from the time I got hurt, I got to Walter Reed in Washington, D.C. Within about 8 days, I think 8 or 9 days. And it was a rough time. I woke up very confused. I didn't even know where I was. I didn't have any idea of time. I'm so doped up on everything they put you on. I remember waking up, and my mom was in the room with me, and they had, obviously I was bandaged up really bad, or really good, however you want to put it. But I was so doped up, I was really indifferent, and she had to explain to me that my legs were gone. That, she said, remember how we had told you there are some things money can fix, and there's some things money can't. But in this situation, it won't be perfect. But money, we can buy you some legs. They're if you're willing to work and willing to do things, you're going to be okay essentially. And so for the next month, I was in I was in the ICU for a month, and then stepped down for a couple weeks, and then on a regular ward for 2 weeks. I was an inpatient in the hospital for over 2 months. And it was kind of during that time, I remember especially the first few weeks, the level of pain, trying to put it in perspective for people, is I had an external fixator. My right femur was broke, cleanly in 3 places. I had over a dozen surgeries because I was ate up with infection and bacteria. At one point, they thought they were going to have to cut me off. And for those, obviously, you can't see, but I was amputated above knee on both legs. So all I have are 2 femurs. And my right femur was shattered, was broken 3 places. I have a plate, 10 pins that hold together. My pelvis was broke. I had broke fingers, a couple broke orbital bone, other lacerations on my arms, and which are minor compared to losing 2 limbs. But I remember just laying there a couple times. I had an external fixator on my right leg. And for those who don't know that, if you've ever seen like someone that's had like a neck injury and they drill, it's a big cage essentially they put to hold your body parts together. And so just the level of pain, I remember just wanting to, not that I wanted to die, but I was indifferent to dying. Like it was so miserable that I didn't care if I didn't wake up. I was just like make the pain go away. But obviously, there were other plans for me. And so you survive that time, and they're starting my rehab for the next next year. So you can it's go ahead.
So now we're in the summer of 2006, the fall of 2006. Once you're getting out of
once I leave, yeah. So I was up there for 13 months, and I retire. In 13 months later, I retired at the end of April of 2006. And it was it's a very confusing time for me in many ways. I look back, you're trying to figure out your new normal, right? You're trying to figure out what's my life going to be like. I'm 20
right.
At this point. I'm 24, and I've had a traumatic injury. I mean, severely life-changing injury. I have to figure out who I am again, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Per se, I kind of, the politics side of things never really, I'd never really entered my brain. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it as keeping up with it, but not something I ever thought I'd get into. But how to say this properly? My mother told me early on, you can be better from what happened to you, or you can be bitter.
Yeah.
And I look at it like
that.
this, that
That's
I can
good.
be that, and I always took that to heart, that I'm not going to be bitter. Yes, I've had some rough times.
Sure.
I've struggled mentally with it. You can't go through something that traumatic and it not change you. Like, I don't care who you are. And I've acted out, I've done all kinds of things, but I've never given up. And I've always taken pride in that, because we lost 28, right? I keep on my phone, on my phone every day is the memorial at Camp Shelby with 28 names on there. And I'm so fortunate not to be the 29th. And I realized that yes, what happened to me was terrible. What happened to me was horrible in many ways. Painful, all those, mentally, physically, emotionally, all those things. But it's almost my duty to live a life worthy of their sacrifice, It's just my grandfather used to tell me that it's he's a World War II veteran, as we talked about. He told me one time, we were joking about getting older, and never complain about getting older, because there's
Right.
so many that never get the opportunity.
That's right.
And so I've always tried to have an attitude of being grateful for what I have, as opposed to being cynical about what I don't. And has it always been easy? No, but man, I've strived to never give in to the demons. So,
And I think it's one of those things that and I'm probably one of the few people that saw this, but there was a MTV series.
True Life.
Do you want to?
Oh, it's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
So they had MTV True Life. Sometimes it was, I'm whatever. I have some kind of weird job, or they did something that was just extraordinary for their age, or whatever it might be. People that were going through certain tough situations in life, and they would, highlight 3 or 4 people on this show, following them around day-to-day life. And they did one about combat veterans.
Well, yeah, it was called I'm a Civilian Again.
I'm a Civilian
It
Again.
followed me and I think 2 other guys about our return from service. I was the injured. I was the wounded warrior they wanted to profile.
But what stuck out, because I had only met you just really briefly at that point, because my future wife, back then we were just dating, and everybody was like, "Why is she with him?" But
we all thought that, Ben.
Everyone.
You completely you so outkicked your coverage, my man.
That's just the story of my life. That's gonna be.
No, I've known your wife longer than I knew you. I grew up around the corner from her.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I think we had just met really briefly, and then next time we see is on MTV, and Lindsay's like, "We have to watch this." So we watched the show, and what struck us the most, I think, and I'm sure it's somewhere on the internet somewhere because nothing ever goes away. Once it's on the internet or on TV, is that your outlook on everything was so much more positive and so much more like, you know what, like, yes, this happened, but like, I'm going to do something with it.
Yeah.
And that was probably the most striking thing out of all the people, and that you were the most, affected in a lot of ways. You're the most physically affected. You had gone through the most trauma out of the people in the group. So it was very, definitely very encouraging. It was awesome to see, and it's also TV, so I know that it's not all.
The
accurate
outtakes that didn't get shown were obviously the best. Thank God. I would probably never had a political career, but anyway, all joking aside, but to your point, man, it was, and I've gotten that from people. It's funny you say that. I hadn't thought about that show in years, and so it's funny you bring that up. But I used to get that a lot from, man, we saw yours, and you seemed to be the quote normal one, and that's fair. It's not fair. It is what it is, and so everybody deals with things differently. And
right.
I remember one being a Marine. I forget who that the guy was, and there's also a level of trauma when you see your friends and your brothers die. That's an invisible wound that's hard to deal with. And so I'm not going to judge that guy.
Sure.
But for me, I always wanted to take the attitude of, like, I guess I got angry about the fact that my life is not over.
Right.
And I'm not going to be defined by what happened to me. Like, my entire identity was never my military career, right? Mm-hmm. And I understand some people, they whether it's their job, whatever it is, their entire identity is wrapped up in one thing. But that was never me. It was something I did and something I'm proud that I did, but it was never going to be all of who I was. Like, I'm 24 years old. My life is not over.
Right.
If this is all I do, then my life is meaningless. Right. Mm-hmm. That I'm more than just cannon fodder for somebody. I'm more than just somebody that got blown up overseas. Like, I'm going to do mm-hmm. something. And so I'm going to be a productive member of society. And mm-hmm. so that's just that was my attitude then. And I was very fortunate that I have a great group of best friends around me that treated me. Like they didn't treat me with kid gloves. They didn't treat me, and you saw it in the video from the show. And to this day, it's still the same way. We make jokes about my legs. We make jokes. It's normal guy banter. Mm-hmm. And so I felt normal from that aspect. That was my comfort zone. The people that knew me before and that would treat me the way that I always want to be treated, just normal. And so. Right. That it allowed me to feel like I could do those things. But I was never going to give in and never going to allow my situation to dictate my life. Like, that's just not going to happen. Like, no.
So you went on, you come back, you go to school at Mississippi State.
Yes. Finish
up school there. And then at some point you decide to dive into politics.
Yeah. So backtrack a little bit. While I was an inpatient at Walter Reed, the former congressman from the coast, Gene Taylor, he had reached out to Mississippi State because I'd been a student at State. Okay. And essentially, I didn't get asked. I got told, you will intern for me.
Right.
And I laughed. I said, yes, sir. And of course, at the time, Gene he'd been a Democrat, and obviously I was a Republican. And I remember joking with him in the hospital when he came and saw me. And I said, sir, I've got something to tell you. And he's like, what's that? And I said, well, I'm a Republican. He said, well, I don't mind if you don't. I laughed. I said, here we go. To this day, I keep in touch with him. He is a wonderful, wonderful human being. Mm-hmm. I love Gene Taylor. I'm forever grateful to him. But I worked for him, and I actually worked for him during Katrina. And so, I would go to Capitol Hill 3 days a week and answer phones and do things like that. So that was another interesting time that I was there. You know, he's a congressman for the coast of Mississippi during mm-hmm. Katrina. I remember I remember distinctly being in the office and we couldn't find him. You know, they were struggling to hear from him because all the communications were down. This is 2005. It's not easy. You know, cell towers are gone. But come to find out, Gene doesn't like the story being told, but he's down there in his own personal boat, You know, his home's destroyed.
Oh, yeah.
He's rescuing people. He's going up He's going up hours north to get fuel to bring back. Like he's just being a human being.
Sure.
You know, and giving back. And he doesn't like those stories being told, but that's the human side of not everybody in politics is a bad person, by the way. Not everybody. It's a distinction that we love to pick on people that serve as if they're some kind of evil human because they raise their right hand and want to serve, but that's not always the case. But I worked for him, and that's kind of how I got into politics. And I remember he had told me, "Hey man, whenever you're ready, if I have an opening, man, you're welcome to come work for me." And so I wanted to, but I did not want to go back to Washington D.C. I had zero desire to go back to Washington D.C. I hate it up there. It's not a handicap friendly area. It's not. I just don't like D.C. I'm a Southern boy. Well, he didn't have any openings on the coast, and I did not want to go to D.C. to work. And so I told him that I had this opportunity to run for alderman, and he encouraged me to run. And so, as they say, the rest is history. And I ran for alderman, 2009, and then at 27 years old, and got elected, and served 3 terms. My last 2 terms, I was alderman at large, and served 3 terms in the city of Southaven. And it was one of the big honors of my life to serve my hometown city. You know, I used to hear all the time of, man, when are you going to run for something bigger? And to me, there's nothing bigger than my hometown.
Sure.
That I almost took that as an insult. Like, what's bigger than your hometown, serving your hometown and making a change? Because at the local level, and you guys know this, at the local level, you can actually make a difference. Like
Yes.
You may.
agree.
I'm jaded when it comes to national politics. I'll freely admit that. Right. I'm jaded as can be. But on a local and state level, you can make a difference. You know, it matters who's in office. People think it doesn't matter. It totally matters who's in office. You know, and so I wanted to affect change, but in a good way. And it was one of the biggest honors of my life to be able to serve my city for 12 years.
And served at alderman at large all 3 terms?
No,
Or-
first term I was Ward 4,
Okay.
and then I ran for at large the last 2 terms.
And that was so one of the reasons why Chad and I got this podcast started. We call it the Boardroom because Board of Alderman, we work in the boardroom, that kind of thing, is to give people more of an inside look at the decision-making process and everything that really goes into it. Because a lot of times I think if people attend meetings, it's like you meet once every 2 weeks, and we're here for, hour and a half, and a lot of decisions get made. Are they even, what goes into this? And there's mountains of information that were given, I think, before every meeting, as I'm sure y'all were.
People, a lot of times people they don't even know what we do as an
Sure.
alderman. I can't
That's
tell you
right.
times I get asked, what is an alderman? Well, we're the legislative body of the city. What does that mean? Okay, well now I've got to get a civics class. But to your point is that there's so much that goes into it. And usually I've noticed this is a lot of times people would get mad after a decision's made because they don't pay attention. They don't pay attention and until after something's done. Then they're I don't understand what happened. Well, this was talked about for months leading up. I can't help that you didn't pay attention. I wish people were more civic minded. I wish they were more involved. I mean, I'll be quite blunt with you. As you know, I'm pretty open and honest.
Right.
The election turnout in this county, we just had an election 2 days ago at the time of this podcast. The election turnout is embarrassing. Mm-hmm. The fact that we can barely get 25% of total registered voters to vote is shameful. It is absolutely shameful. How can you complain and get upset about things that are done locally when you won't even take the time to go vote for people that you want to represent you? Mm-hmm. And I hope my words bother someone enough where they go, you know what, he's right, I'm going to go vote. We have municipal elections coming up next year or a year after next, and you have to be involved. If you don't go vote and you don't know what goes on in the city, you really, how do you have a right to complain? Mm-hmm. So that is my soapbox on that.
No, and I think that it's a good segue in a lot of ways to Veterans Day. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to get more involved because looking at the 3 of us, if you had to pick 2 out of the 3 of us to go with you in a fight, I'm probably the 3rd choice every time. Like, let's just be honest. Even current, how it is, that's just how it is, right?
Now. You're feisty. I've seen you.
I don't know. Chad,
Chad runs a jail, so I don't know. He deals with the bad of the bad every day.
I worked out with Chad for like one summer, and I was like, this man's a machine. He's insane. Like I don't need to go like this. It's not good. It's not good for me personally, but that's what he likes to do, and I applaud him for it. He's staying in shape. He's doing good, but the way that I felt like I could give back and publicly serve was by trying to run for alderman and serve a city that, while I didn't grow up here, I think it's very similar to where I did grow up, kind of a suburban metro area, with a large city that has issues with crime, has issues with a lot of things. Atlanta and Memphis, even though Atlanta is probably not as extreme as Memphis is in terms of a crime rate, it's still a very dangerous city. And you have a suburban area where people want to have good schools and just kind of live a quiet life, more than anything else. But at the same time, this is America. You want to be able to do what you want to do, enjoy what you want to enjoy, and that was what prompted me to jump into all this. And I'm sure you had a lot of the same kind of motivations. Working for the city of Southaven, working for the people of Southaven.
And to your point about running, you talk about caring about what's going on with your kids. You're a family man. You choose to live here. You choose to raise your family here. And how do you protect that way of life? Well, you protect that way of life by electing people that have the same values as you. You protect that way of life by ensuring that you put people in office that will do the right thing. Being apathetic and just thinking, well, somebody else is going to vote, so they're good. You have all the excuses in the world. I get it. You have to go to work. I get it.
Right.
I get it. Is election day ideal for everybody? No, it's on a Tuesday. It's only open from 7 to 7. I get it. I wish we could change it to put it to the weekend, to a Saturday or something. I wish there were changes, but it's a system that we have. Mm-hmm. At the same time, it's a right. It's a fundamental right that you have, and you should take. It's not something. It shouldn't be seen as a burden. Or it shouldn't be seen as something that you just, I'm just going to halfway, whatever. I'm indifferent. No, your way of life depends on that. Yep. So, you have no one to blame but yourself if you don't get out and vote.
And my grandmother was a poll worker back in the day. She would run the voting precinct. She loved doing it. She would take time off. She worked for the county in the tag office in DeKalb County, Georgia. She would take time off from work to go run a polling precinct. My wife's done time as a poll worker working at a precinct, in the past, and and then I had grandfather, uncles that served in the armed forces, and so you do kind of. I think it's either something that is either taught early on that everybody needs to give back at some point in whatever way you can, and that's just sort of how it is. It's kind of like if you're a church going person or something like that, at some point they're going to ask you, hey, you need to hold the door open for somebody else. show them where everything is. That's kind of the whole deal. Like you can be part of an organization, but it's also good to be able to serve and see how other things work, bring other people in, and show them what service is about too.
Yeah. Well, my mother, she is the Bridgetown poll. She's whatever that poll manager or whatever there. So she's done that the last, I think, 4 elections. So, and I think what's so frustrating, Ben and William, about as we follow politics, is what's really frustrating about the voter turnout here. If DeSoto County would vote at 40%, we could really have a lot of control at the state level.
Correct.
And that's what's so frustrating to me is people complain about the interstate not being expanded, or we're always the last one to get something. And if our people would vote, I think we'd have a lot more attention of the state leaders. So.
And to your point, the idea, man, you're 100% correct. And I've said this before that how can we go down to Jackson if they don't? We have to give them something to respect.
Sure.
And they come up here and they come up here because the statewide officials, when they want our votes, and they treat us like Memphis when they don't. But you'll hear a lot of local politicians say, or local elected officials say, I want to get our fair share of money, and that can be construed in one of two ways. Some people say, oh, you're trying to be a communist, and you're trying to be, they go to the extreme, or you're trying to like a Democrat. No, that's not what that means. What that means is DeSoto County is one of the few areas in the state that gives an overwhelming amount of our tax dollars. We're wanting our tax dollars back here. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's what we're asking for. We're not asking for a hand-me-out. We're simply asking for the money that we put into Jackson to be seen and to be used for areas up here. That's it. The I-55 widening. It should not take an act of Congress, to get something done. I mean, it is a no-brainer. And we have to have a voting block up here that puts fear in the rest of the state.
And you look at like Hinds County, for example. Like Hinds County is one of those big voting blocks they always talk about on election days when statewide elections. I think they had 67,000 some odd votes that were. Well, DeSoto County could have 67,000 people vote. It's 50% turnout.
And your tax money is going to Jackson regardless. So you either get it back, and we see the fruits of our labor, the fruits of your labor, and you see your tax dollars at work, or it goes to other parts of the state. But either way, the state is taking your money. So that's what it's trying to get that across to people. That's why it matters who we put. That's why it matters having a delegation in Jackson that works for the will of the people and also works with local elected officials to get things done.
Right. And we got some good people coming into the legislature this time.
Do.
So, we kept DeSoto County pretty red. So that's something positive about the election kind of recap.
I'm very optimistic with our delegation.
Yeah. We were. I was with Rodney Hall the other day. I'm very impressed with him. He's going to be good. Of course, Doxler's on the board with us. He's going to be good. Kimlery Remake, she's going to be great. I have a relationship with her, so I think we kind of got rid of some of our troublemakers, and we got a little better group. So.
True story. Rodney's father was my recruiter.
Okay.
So I've known Rodney since he was a kid. So he's a friend of mine, and I was glad to support him.
We were asked to speak to the Boy Scout group on Monday night, and he was talking to them about I think he's in the cavalry. Is that right?
No, well, he's an infantry officer.
Yeah, but he has his hat and all that.
He is. He's an interesting guy. He is he's very humble, but he's a very high achieving man. He's an infantry officer. He's an attorney. He could easily take the easy route in the military and been a JAG officer, but he is a combat arms infantry officer. He's been to Ranger School. He's airborne qualified, air assault qualified. He is a good leader. We are very, very grateful and fortunate to have him. I'm going to just leave it at that.
Well, you've been very generous with your time. Anything you kind of want to end with?
Man, that's good. I want to say thank you for what you guys do. I think it's important to, like Ben said earlier, that you guys are giving an insight of what happens at a local level. And I think I wish I'd have thought of this years ago, but but we can't all be as smart as you guys. But no, seriously, what you do is phenomenal, and I wish you continued success. And please don't stop what you're doing. It matters, and I think having on local elected officials.
We're making too much money. We're not going to stop.
Exactly. But I think it's good.
Where's that money going?
Where's that money? But I think you guys have it on. Whether you had on local mayors, other elected officials from towns would be good because you get an insight to what's going on. I think it's important. So thank you for what you do.
Don't forget, Veterans Day is Saturday, November 11th. In case you have not, we're recording this pre-Veterans Day. So if you're listening in. The Hernando Veterans Day Parade is on Friday, November 10th. So
10 a.m.
10 a.m. So
and there's luncheon following at the Armory, I believe at 11.
And Southaven's Veteran Days program is at 11 at the arena on 51.
And I think I saw Sheriff-elect Thomas Tuggle's the speaker.
Our new sheriff will be the guest speaker. He sure will.
So thank a veteran this weekend. If you know of someone that is a veteran, I know that I have a lot of business customers that I reach out to. I have like a file to make sure I reach out to those people to tell them, thank you for your service. It's one of those important things to do. I know that you probably can't hear it enough, I would think, right, William? I know that you may have a different take on it, but
I'm very appreciative when someone thanks me. That's not it. For me, it's more of a, I look at like the older veterans, and I'm still in all of them. Like when I see Vietnam guys, Korean War veterans, and I'm the grandson of 2 World War II veterans. They're still giants in my eyes. So in a weird way, and a lot of younger veterans, if you understand what I'm saying when I say this, I don't feel worthy of being in their category in many ways, as strange as that sounds. So, but no, it was an honor to serve. I wouldn't change anything. I am who I am today because of everything that's happened to me. And if you go back and change one thing that's happened to you, you change the entire direction of your life. And I wouldn't be sitting here with you guys today. You and I probably wouldn't know each other. And so everything that's happened since I got injured is in many ways, regardless of what happens, been a blessing.
That's awesome. We definitely appreciate you coming and joining us. Yeah. Again, folks, this is our Veterans Day episode of the Boardroom podcast. We have William Brooks on with us. Just a great man, a great veteran here that has served DeSoto County, has a lifetime of service. We appreciate having him on. Appreciate y'all listening in, hearing his story. Thank a veteran this weekend on Veterans Day weekend. But for right now, I'm Ben Piper.
I'm Chad Wicker.
Hope you've enjoyed the Boardroom Podcast.